What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Pain and Misery podcast. As it is episode 82, we are going to be discussing another series loss as the Mets drop once again a series to the Atlanta Braves this time. And it sucks here. I mean, I don't know what else we could say that's different, what else we could say that's new. It's kind of to the point where it's numbing and it's kind of like, this is becoming the normal for the podcast where it's just like we're talking about the same things. We're talking about losing. And it's unfortunate for a team that went into the year having World Series aspirations to find themselves 21 games above 500 at one point in the season to now fall only 7 above 500 with the Cincinnati Reds, who are making, I don't know, probably a quarter of what the Mets payroll is, something along those lines. Significantly less is all that matters. And we're scoreboard watching that team. We are counting on the Milwaukee Brewers to beat that team because the Mets are so incompetent of just controlling their own destiny at the moment. And this, I would argue, is one of the worst series of the season for a multitude of reasons. But before we jump into all that, I ask that you leave a like on your way into the show, or if you're watching on replay, subscribe if you guys are new to the channel, especially if you're Met fans. Thank you, everyone, for the growth as of lately on the channel. We hit 500 subs last episode, which we appreciate, and we are quickly getting up there. So if there's one thing coming out of the losing, it is the growth, it is the support, and we appreciate that. Would I rather them be winning and have less support? Yes, because I would rather watch this team win. But unfortunately, here we are. As like I said, the Mets played arguably their worst series of the season because there were opportunities to sweep in this series, despite not playing the best baseball. Because in Game 2, you look at the 6-run lead. You look at Game 3, where you're going against Bryce Elder, who is not a good starting pitcher in this league. And once again, this offense fails, and you still had the lead. And this bullpen that you thought was a super bullpen was not able to get the job done, unfortunately, in that third game. You had sloppy decisions all around yet again. I mean, just once again, inexcusable baseball played.
Yeah, I mean, what more is there to say? This team was playing bad baseball, and as I said yesterday on the post-game show, in the comment section, the easiest way to sum up the game yesterday was bad teams find ways to lose. That's what the Mets are doing right now. They're a bad team, and they're just finding all sort of different ways to lose, whether it's blow a 6-0 lead in the fourth inning, whether it's blow a game late in the eighth inning because Ryan Helsley just is not able to pitch since he was acquired by the New York Mets. Right now it's just a complete mess. Right now, you're not getting any you're not getting any sustainability from any factor of this team. The offense continues to be hot and cold for a majority of the time. Again, you're barely getting any length from your starter. And even when you do get some sort of length, like what we got from Senga yesterday, the offense is cold, doesn't score any runs, and then the bullpen ends up blowing it. And then, as we've seen many times throughout the last week, how many times does the bullpen come in and blow the game? So there is no one part of this team, whether it's offense, starting pitcher, or bullpen, that's being consistent right now. And I mean, if anything, they're being consistently inconsistent, which I guess it's something that this Mets team has done well over the past 2.5 months because they're just, like I said, they're just a bad team. They're just a bad team. And like I said last podcast, I've already turned the page to offseason mode just because this team is not going anywhere for me personally. Listen, if they somehow turn around and prove me wrong, sure, I'll take it. I'll be happy. I'll support them. But just looking at all the evidence so far, throughout this whole season, through 121 games, I have no reason to believe that they're going to do anything, even if they make the playoffs, because that's not even a guarantee right now. And let me tell you right now, if they miss the playoffs, it's fully deserved. Like the Cincinnati Reds deserve to make the playoffs a whole lot more than this New York Mets team, considering when you look at the star power from each team, when you look at the payroll of each team, when you look at the ambition of both teams going into this year. So, yeah. And like I said, even if the Mets make the playoffs, I don't expect them to do anything. Like, if anything, they'll be out in 2, 3 games in the wild card. So really, for me, I'm already turning the page to next year, looking at what can be done in the offseason and looking ahead to next year. Because, and sure, people might say that's negative. There's still a whole lot of games to be played, but like I said, I'm just looking at solely based off the evidence of what I've seen over this whole season, and there's no evidence, there's no factors to show me that this team is capable of winning a World Series. So yeah, I mean, just play out the rest of the year. Well, basically, whatever happens the rest of the year, it happens, and then we'll go from there. Is my point of view.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that like mentally, I think both of us have honestly turned the page for a couple of weeks now to next season. But we have a show to do here, so unfortunately we can't just skip to the off season, which sucks because I can tell you right now, I would have so much more to talk about, and I'd have so much more fun talking about what this team could do going into next season. And again, it's sad that it is August 15th and this team had World Series aspirations going into the year, and we have to talk about this. But here we are. The biggest concern that I have after this series, to be honest with you, is the fact that because what I'm seeing online is, well, if you're going to take away a positive, Francisco Lindor had a good series. Okay, that's great. But the concerning part to me is he had a good series, and what did that do for this team? It did nothing. Last year, the difference was when Lindor was going, this team was going. Lindor was going this series, and they still lost it. So even if Lindor's turning a corner, even if he starts getting going, there's nothing to tell me that it matters because what's the rest of the team going to do? I think last night, and you could, debate whether it's you, Matt, or anyone in the chat. I think last night was the worst of the 3 games because it's like you look at the bottom of the order, you get one walk 5 through 9 from the lineup against Bryce Elder, nonetheless, who again went 7 innings when that is just inexcusable from this offense. Juan Soto, yet again, where is he in the clutch? And this is what's also driving me insane because I'm seeing people saying, but the year as a whole is good. While that may be true, and I'm not sitting here and telling you Juan Soto's never going to be clutch as a New York Met, but where is it when we need it here in the dire stretch of the season? Where is a clutch moment from Juan Soto? Brandon Nimmo continuing to give you uncompetitive at bats. Pete Alonso had some multi-hit games in the first 2 games, but again, where did that get you? And I think the saddest part too is we had to sit here and applaud Kodai Senga yesterday for doing the bare minimum. Like that's how bad things are right now at this team. That Kodai Senga going 5 2/3 yesterday, it was like he was the second coming of Jacob DeGrom, the second coming of Christ. Give him a standing ovation level because we got 5 innings from a pitcher. Hallelujah. I can't sit here and say because, like I said, Lindor was good throughout this series offensively. Pete Alonso was good outside of that 3rd game offensively. I can't sit here and say that it matters because the results are the results. And at the end of the day, that's what matters. And that's what's very frustrating too. It's like, sure, you could look at the baseline numbers for Juan Soto and say he's having a good year. You could look at the baseline numbers for Nimmo and say he's having a good year. Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor, but none of that matters when the results are what they are. And then on top of that, the opposite field approach, which we continue to see throughout the series. The piss poor coaching from specifically the Mike Sarbaughs of the world. Once again, glaring. And then, I mean, Hefner's kind of going under the radar with not getting criticism when he deserves it too, because this pitching staff has been falling apart so much and it's basically held together by, I mean, David Peterson was the duct tape for a bit. Now, is it going to be Senga? Like, that's the thing. If Senga's starting to bounce back, is David Peterson going to, rebound from his last start? I don't know. But all I know is that It's just everything is going wrong, and like you said, bad teams find ways to lose it. Because David Peterson, 6-run lead, giving you the worst start. I mean, we were kicking back at the stadium, just like having basic conversations because it's like there's no way they're blowing a 6-run lead. They did, and then yesterday, like I said too, I said it in the group chat before it even happened. Never wrong, just early. Who's blowing it? Helsley or Diaz? I asked that simply in our group chat, and long and behold,
Yeah, listen, you could argue which of the two losses were worse. I mean, yesterday's loss was bad all around, but I mean, looking at that second game, especially with us being in the building, blowing a 6-run lead and giving up all 9 runs in one inning, I mean that's pretty bad as well. So I mean, whatever game you want to choose of being worse, I mean, I could see the argument for both. They both sucked because they both ended up in losses, but I just I'm kind of at a loss for words right now because it's like, and especially I know like people get on Mendoza for saying it, but I mean like when you look at the individual talent of this team, it doesn't make sense that they're playing this bad of baseball. Like I understand that they're not getting the length specifically from their starters, but even then, just looking at the names, and again, this is just saying names and not saying overall how they're playing, but looking just at the names of the offense, they should be better. And then look at the names of the bullpen should be a lot more reliant on this. But it's just like, again, like bad teams find bad ways to lose. And it's like right now, this team's at a point where it's just like, no matter what they do, everything just continues to spiral out of control. I mean, they've just lost 15 out of the last 17 games. Like,
but
and
they scored over 10 runs in those wins. That's what
yeah,
matters most.
but yeah. Listen, I mean, just going back to that game. I mean, I guess, and I'll give a congratulations to Pete Alonso because he does deserve it. So, congratulations to him on breaking the all-time Mets home run record, passing Darryl Strawberry. But even then, like you talked about it on the post game show for that game, and we talked about it endlessly on our group chat. Cool, they scored 13 runs. Are you going to follow that up? And they did for the first 2 innings of that second game against Carlos Carrasco. But again, like we were saying at Citi Field, we're not really impressed by that because this offense should be doing that against Carlos Carrasco, who's basically on the verge of retirement. If not, he should already be retired. And then it's like, okay, so after that fourth inning, right, it sucks. You go down 9-6. The pitching just goes haywire. David Peterson is walking the ballpark. Obviously gives up that bases clearing double to Jerkson Profar for the Braves to cut the lead down to 6-4. Then Reed Garrett comes in again. He can't find the strike zone. He's giving up hits, loads up the bases, gives up the grand slam to Michael Harris, but the Braves up 9-6. But like we were saying, like, okay, it's only the fourth inning. Where is the offense for the rest of the game? And it's not like the Braves were bringing out all-stars out of their bullpen because I saw some of the ERAs of their guys they were bringing out. Some of the guys had 5 ERAs, some of the guys had high 4 ERAs. So it's not like the game was over right then and there. I mean, for us, we were thinking it because we know that this offense is incapable of showing any type of fight. And even when they do show any type of fight, it's only for a short period of time. Don't expect it for the whole amount of the game. It's sort of like last night where it's like, okay, they go down 2-1, they show some fight, they take the lead back by going up 3-2, courtesy of a Brandon Nimmo sacrifice fly and then a Pete Alonso RBI single. But then Ryan Helsley comes in, blows the game. They're down 4-3. They still have 2 innings to put together some sort of offensive momentum. And going to the bottom of the eighth, the top of the order was up. I believe. I'm not sure if Lindor was leading off that inning, but I know you had Soto, you had Nimmo, and you had Pete Alonso for the bottom of the eighth. And then again, what did those guys do? Nothing. So yeah, it's really hard to comprehend. And then I mean, just again going off the fact that you're not getting any sort of length from your starter. I know we got 5 2/3 from Senga. And again, I guess I'll take a small positive there. At least he looked semi-competent. At that start. But again, David Peterson just horrible after the second inning because remember, if you guys recall, like when we got to the third inning, he got out of a jam. It was a bases loaded jam. He made a pitch. He got out of it. I'm like, okay, settle down after that. But then the fourth inning came and just again couldn't locate anything. And then another bad start by Klay Holmes where it's just and I mean I briefly want to touch upon Klay Holmes because again I know he's been struggling and people say like he should be moved to the bullpen. I've gotten to that point of saying that he should be moved to the bullpen, but when you look at the other starters, and especially since the Mets just moved Frankie Montas to the bullpen, it's like, can you move Klay Holmes to the bullpen? Because really, there's no starting pitching depth to be able to do it. And the one thing that bothers me with Klay Holmes, it's not even the fact that you can see he's hitting a wall in terms of fatigue and stamina, because that doesn't really bother me because that was a risk that we all knew that could happen to where because he's still adjusting from reliever to starter. It's more the fact, and again, I brought this up in the group chat when we were watching the game, and you brought it up on the post game show. He still has way too many reliever tendencies for my liking. And again, like we're in the middle of August. Because my biggest problem with Klay Holmes is not that he doesn't have good stuff. I think Klay Holmes does have good stuff. My problem with Klay Holmes is he doesn't utilize enough of his stuff. He's, like I said again, he's way too reliant in his reliever tendencies to where he's only using one or two pitches. Because again, when you look at the Savant breakdown, 68% of his pitches were the sinker. Out of 85 pitches, he threw the sinker 58 times. And then the second pitch he threw the most was the kick change. He threw it 11 times for 13% of his overall pitches. And listen, as a reliever, you could get away with only using 2 or 3 pitches at most because as a reliever, you're only coming in for 1 inning, maybe 2 if you have to be stretched out the most. If you're not a long man type. So you could get away with only using 2 to 3 type of pitches, like I said, because you're not facing an order, multiple times around. However, in Klay Holmes' case, when you're facing the order 2 or 3 times, you have to expand your arsenal because the opposing lineups, and especially with the Braves, I know they've underperformed this year, but they have a lot of good hitters in the lineup. Like they know how to pick up on tendencies. And when you're basically just going out there, and I know we have the running joke of Klay Holmes sinker only challenge, but when you're only going out there and repeatedly throwing sinkers and changeups, like they're going to pick up on that. And it's like I stated before, like, okay, as a starting pitcher, there's only a certain few amount of starting pitchers that could get away with only throwing 2 pitches. Like I brought up many times before, Jacob deGrom was able to do this. The difference, though, with Jacob deGrom was the guy had elite velocity where he could top out and throw 101, 102 on his fastball consistently throughout a start. And then, he also had a slider, which he could also top out on 91, 92 miles an hour. So good luck trying to hit that. And then not only that, he had insane movement on his stuff. And then 3, he had elite command of the strike zone. Like he could pinpoint his pitches wherever he wanted to. And I look at Klay Holmes and, again, doesn't have the overpowering velocity. He does have decent stuff. Obviously, doesn't have the DeGrom type of, stuff and movement on his thing.
Not a lot of people do.
No. And he does have decent command of the strike zone when he is utilizing his whole arsenal. But again, that comes to my whole point where he's not using his whole arsenal. And like I said, as a starter, when you're going through the order multiple times, you can't rely on 2 pitches because the opposing lineup is going to pick up on your tendencies. And when I look at this, only threw the slider 6 times, only threw the sweeper 5 times, only threw the cutter 3 times, only threw the 4-seamer 2 times. And it's one of those things where I look at it, especially with Holmes, like there's those times where he gets into trouble, and it's like, bro, like, and especially I see this a lot of times with pitchers, but when you get into trouble, sometimes you just have to load back, throw your 4-seamer, and say, good luck, hit this. This is my best stuff right here. And he doesn't do that. And again, like you brought it up, this is something that we were talking about after his first on in Houston. But at least after the first on in Houston, we could at least, say, okay, we expected it because, again, it was his first start. He's still adjusting. But, again, this is what how many starts he's made, 20-something starts. And the fact that he's still not making these adjustments and utilizing his full arsenal, because there was a point in time where he was utilizing more of his stuff. And listen, I get that people adjust and develop at different rates. Like we said multiple times, development and adjustment periods aren't linear. Some people take longer periods than others. But at this point, the Mets are not in a position where they could say, "Okay, Clay, like take as much time as you can, and just we'll continue to use you as a starter," because if the Mets were getting innings from their other guys like Senga, Manaya, Peterson, Montas, they could very well say, okay, just continue to do your thing. But when you're at a point where none of your starters give you any length, you can't afford to do that. And as I said before, you can't really move them to the bullpen right now because you just moved Montas, and I know McLean's being brought up. You could bring up Sproat, but again, they're
Bro had
just
a rough outing yesterday.
I know, but they're just in a really bad spot right now, in just terms of the whole aspect of the team.
Yeah, Sprode unfortunately had hit a wall in the fourth inning, which I guess he'd fit right in. But this is why with the Holmes thing, it's like I said before, this is why Hefner deserves some accountability too, because you have you have the manager, and I don't disagree with him. He's right that Klay Holmes, it's not like the velo is down or anything. Like the stuff is still there, like Matt just said too. But where is the adjustment to get him through the order the third time? Because every time it's the order the third time, he hits that wall. And he had 3 whiffs on 6 swings on the changeup, only threw it 11 times. Where is the adjustment? Like that falls on the pitching coach. There needs to be some sort of tweak to say, okay, this is how we could get you through the order a third time. And he's just not expanding the arsenal at all. And it would be fine if he was getting the volume, but he's not. I don't know if it's something where it's like maybe he should wait for the third time to throw the sinker to, save it for the third time and throw what he's comfortable with or what, but something has to be changed, and that falls on Hefner and crew, because why is it that every single time it's the same problem? I mean, every game log you could look, and the biggest issue is he's throwing a sinker way too much. And the difference, like we said before, was when he was making, because we have to remember too that there was a time he was giving good starts. Like this is something that we can't forget here. And a lot of it was when he was actually weaponizing, especially the kick change, which we were raving about earlier, and especially in spring training. Like when he was looking good in spring training, a lot of it was the kick change, a lot of it was the sweeper, a lot of it was using the four seam as well. But for some reason, I don't understand what it is, but just he continues to mess around way too much with the sinker. I mean, just for the sake of it, I actually want to do this on the fly here, so I apologize. It's great podcasting, but I just want to find a Klay Holmes start where it really paints the light of him utilizing his arsenal to his full. I'd have to really go back to find something earlier in the year where it was just like a May start, like 6 innings against the Cardinals here on April 20th. So let's go to April 20th and look at the Savant page, because now this is probably going to make me infuriated. And we praised him too. I remember after that Houston start, we praised him for the adjustment that he made. And I think in Miami was his next start, or against Miami, one or the other. We were praising the fact that he deepened the arsenal and it worked out. I mean, yeah, just looking at it here, that St. Louis start, how many times did he say he threw a sinker yesterday?
58%. I mean, he threw it 58 times, 68% of his pitches.
In that St. Louis start, threw it 31 times for 34%, threw the changeup 17 times, the four seam 15 times, the slider 14 times, threw a couple cutters and sweepers in there, which got him at 91 pitches. Where is that? And again, why is the pitching coach not able to acknowledge this? We better see adjustments with Ryan Helsley too, because I can tell you right now, his slider has not looked as good as I thought it was going to. I mean, he's supposed to have a wipeout slider, and I have not seen any wipeout tendency since his first appearance with the Mets. It's just, where are these adjustments? And then there are so many times this year too where, you know, we pointed out, and so does Frank on Mets Weekly. It's just like there are times where Hefner will go out to the mound, and then the next pitch it's either a hard hit ball to the warning track like a double, or it's a home run. And it's like, what did Hefner say to the pitcher that the next pitch is off the bat and gone? So I think a lot of it, and again, Chavez definitely deserves his blame, but there is so much with this pitching staff where it's like Hefner deserves just as much shit right now, to be honest with you.
That's a big reason of why we've said that this team is underperforming right now. It's not just that, your quote unquote top guys aren't performing, but this team is coached poorly. Whether you look at Mendoza and like, is everything on Mendoza? No, but you look at to a lot of his bullpen decisions, and this is another thing. I know people have blamed Mendoza, especially for last night, for a couple of his bullpen decisions, but I look at the two specifically. I'm like, you can't really blame Mendoza here because the first one, people are blaming him for Ryan Helsley in the eighth inning. Well, who else were you going to in that spot? I mean, listen, could you have gone to Diaz considering that it was 2, 3, and 4 in the lineup? Sure, absolutely, and we've called that before. When it's the better part of your lineup, go to your best reliever. But Ryan Helsley was brought in here to be the quote unquote double duo shut end, reliever along with Edwin Diaz. The Mets gave up 3 solid prospects for him, so I'm not hearing that, Helsley shouldn't have been in that situation. Yeah, he should have been. He just didn't get the job done. So for me, that's not a Mendoza. And then the second one was in, I believe it was the 6th inning when the Braves ended up going 2-1, and the Mets Mendy ended up pulling Senga to go to Tyler Rogers, and then Tyler Rogers ended up giving up a single to Ozzy Albies, and the Braves ended up going 2-1. Because I saw a lot of people saying that, Senga was pitching well. Mendy should have kept with Senga. But for me, I look at it and say, okay, we've seen Senga over the last couple starts in the last couple weeks. We've seen him have these big blowups from time to times. I did not have a problem with pulling him there and going to Tyler Rogers. Tyler Rogers simply just didn't execute. He didn't make a good pitch, and Ozzy Albies took it to the opposite field, and he drove in a run. Fair play. Like I said, and again, as a manager, it's like, listen, Mendoza most likely was going to get blamed either way because Tyler Rogers comes and gives up the run. Okay, he gets blamed for taking out Senga. But then if you keep Senga and he gives up the run, then you get people like me and Edwin who say, oh, he should have took out Senga and went to Tyler Rogers. So it's simply down to an execution point because if any one of those two make the pitch and get out of that inning, it's all praise for Mendy, but one guy makes a mistake and the Braves take the lead, and then all of a sudden it's Mendoza who gets the blame. So, and listen, like I said, there's times where Mendoza does deserve blame with his bullpen decisions, but for me in those 2 instances last night, I can't blame Mendoza. Both of the times he made the right moves. They just simply didn't work, and sometimes it's just down to players not executing. But overall, back to the main point I was saying. Along with the top guys not performing to the standard that we anticipate them, being able to, this is just not a well-coached team. Again, Chavez, terrible hitting coach, terrible hitting philosophy. Hefner not making adjustments with the pitching staff. Oh, shit, my camera went out. Give me 1 second. But yeah, like I was saying, Hefner not making the correct pitching adjustments, and then Mike Sarba, again, how many questionable decisions has he made over these past couple games in terms of whether it's not to send guys to home plate correctly or it's holding up guys correctly? The only really coach that I could not give any blame to is Antoine Richardson, the first base coach, because again, the Mets continue to be one of the better base stealing teams out there, and he's making so many good calls in terms of telling guys whether or not to steal bases. So other than him, I can't. Like I said, other than him, the rest of the coaching staff has to take a lot of blame.
And that's why we say coaching matters. Look at the one thing the Mets have excelled at this year is stealing bases. Huh. It's almost like you could credit that to Antoine Richardson, who, like you said, is helping these guys out on the base paths and telling them what certain pitchers' tendencies are, which could help them get a jump and help them steal a bag. So for the coaching doesn't matter crowd, why is it that the one thing that they excel at is the one area where they're actually well coached? Someone explain that to me, because I'd love to know from the people that still somehow say, "Oh, but the hitting coaches only mean so much, the pitching coach only means so much." Clearly not, because the one area they're excelling at, where they set a franchise record at, is the one area they're well coached. Other than that, across the board, it is a train wreck. Simple as that. And just the back to the Mendoza thing, the only time that I really, questioned him during this, I mean, there were 2 times that I questioned him during the series, but again, I don't fault him fully. There was one point in game 2 where I think I was saying Soto should have been in. I don't remember exactly the moment, but I remember last night I thought Brooks Raley should have been at least on the ready for Matt Olson when Tyler Rogers was in, which it didn't matter. And it's not something I would have ridiculed him for, because apparently they were saying as well in the broadcast that Rogers has good numbers against Olson. But that was the only times. Other than that, I can't sit here and say it's his fault for any of this crap. And I'm very critical of Mendoza. Everyone knows that.
Yeah. The only decision, like, and you brought this up in the first game, and Evan Roberts did as well on one of his tweets, was in the first game when Klay Holmes was imploding, he should have brung in Gregory Soto
That
against
was it.
Matt Olson, because Gregory Soto was Matt Olson was 1 for 11 against Gregory Soto, and Mendy decides to leave Klay Holmes in there, and then he ends up giving up the runs. So Soto should have been in that situation, and again, that's really the only bad pitching decision that I could really, really for me say that Mendoza messed up on this series.
Yeah, that was it. It was a game 2. Yeah. Um, but like the sad part is, and you know, I'll make the confession for us on this podcast. We never leave games early. Game 2, it was a long rain delay. Once Paul Blackburn allowed that home run to Ozuna, we didn't need to see more. And there was a guy telling us as we're leaving, he's like, "You're gonna regret leaving when they come back." I wish I was thinking about, but I wish I told that guy, gave that guy my phone number and said, "Call me and tell me how stupid I am if they come back and win. Please do that." And we were right for leaving early, because what the fuck happened after we left? Nothing. Because again, this offense, the second Carrasco was out of the game, you get him out in 2 innings, and all of a sudden the Braves bullpen, they looked like the super pen. Aaron Bummer, Tyler Kinley, like those guys you couldn't tee off of. Razel Iglesias, who has had a shit year. Those guys you couldn't hit off of. It's just absolutely pathetic. And that's why we're kind of in the off-season mode mentally right now, because nothing's going to change. And the sad part is that hot stretch they had at one point in the season, that's looking more like the outlier than anything else right now. Like when they were winning those games in April and the beginning of May, that 2-3 week stretch, that looks like an outlier and looks like a fable compared to the rest of the season, because Evan Roberts keeps posting it. The record since April 30th, they are below 500. And they had like one good stretch of baseball in there where they were beating the Dodgers, and then they beat the White Sox and the Rockies, everyone. Outside of that, it has been bad baseball.
Yeah,
It's
and
that simple.
even with the stretch where they were playing or where they were winning, they weren't even playing well. So we can't even hold our heads high and point to that, saying, "Oh, at least there was a point of the season where the Mets were actually playing, well, competent and reliable, sustainable baseball." Like maybe you could point to certain individual games and say that sure that can apply to, but for a majority, for a long stretch, I I don't see that happening, or at least I didn't see that happening. And again, listen, maybe could they find a way to turn it around? I guess nothing's impossible, right? But as I pointed to and you pointed to, like there's just way too much evidence over this past year of 121 games that they played so far to tell me that that's not going to happen. And like I said, if it does happen, cool. I'll gladly be wrong, and I will cheer this team the rest of the way because we're still watching the games. It's not like we're just like not tuning in. I know people will say it's like, oh, you might as well not watch, but we're both just sick fans that just we don't know how to turn the games off. It's just like we'll watch, and plus we have to do this podcast anyway, and we have to run this channel, so we kind of have an obligation to watch, but yeah, I mean, it is what it is. But yeah, even the point of going back to us leaving the game early, it's like that's something that we never do. We never leave games early. But considering the fact is, considering there was an hour and 45 rain delay, the game didn't start till 8:45, and then by the time Blackburn gives up that two-run homer to Marcell Ozuna, which I believe it was the top of the sixth, and they were down 11-6, it was already 11:30 at night. I had no interest staying to that game till 1:30 a.m. and seeing them get their ass kicked and not being able to hit. Plus, there was a whole. I mean, the game, to be honest, was really really entertaining. It was a couple sections over that was more entertaining because there was apparently brawls and fights a couple sections over from us. So yeah, that game got out of hand quickly.
Yeah, that's the sad part. There was more entertainment from the crowd than anything else that game, which I'm not even going to go into detail with some of the shit that happened. But um, yeah, like again, I'm not one to tell fans how to fan. Like if anyone's like this, go ahead and be that way, but don't tell me that I'm wrong for holding this team accountable and demanding better. You fan how you want to. I'm going to fan how I want to. And don't tune in if you have a problem. It's that simple. Because right now, me personally, I can't sit here and tell myself a lie and say, yeah, this team is going to go on a run because of talent, like the manager is saying. I can't sit here and do that. If you're able to do that, more power to you. And I honestly wish I could be you. I wish. But I can't sit here and lie to myself. And unfortunately, there's just way too much evidence to show that this is who they are. And I don't see it changing. Like the only thing that what have we said for the past few episodes that we're hanging our hat on? A magic switch. When you're hanging on to a magic switch being the savior to the season, you're a lost cause.
Yeah. And those switches don't exist because as
Nope.
we've seen with the Rangers, like how you play in the regular season, those habits, those tendencies, they transfer into the postseason. And not only do they transfer into the postseason, but they're more magnified in the postseason because in the postseason, every pitch, every play matters. You could say in the regular season, okay, that kind of applies, but it's 162 games. Again, you're gonna have games where you lose, you're gonna have games where you win. There's gonna be stretches where you play bad. There's gonna be stretches where you play really good. But in the postseason, you can't afford to have a bad stretch because you know what? You lose 3 games in a row. Guess what? You're either out being swept in the NLDS or you're down 3-0 in the NLCS or the World Series, and right there, most likely your run's over right there. So yeah, there is no magic switch. The way you play in the regular season translates to the postseason, and that's why we always say the regular season It's about working on and improving upon your tendencies, so that way they're refined when you get into the postseason. Because listen, sure, you could not have the greatest tendencies and fundamentals earlier in the season, but like we said, there's 162 games to be played. So as long as you figure out those tendencies and you iron out everything by the end, then sure, that works. But when we're right now on August 15th and this team still doesn't have good fundamentals, there's nothing to tell me that when we get to September 30th that something's just going to magically flip and change. It's not going to happen.
No. And again, when your season comes down to that, you got big problems. It's just that simple. Um, Let me get to some more comments though, because honestly, I mean, do you have anything else really to add about this series? I personally just have nothing else to add that's different. I mean, it again, we're going in circles every single episode talking about the same shit, so it's like, what is there to say anymore?
No, I have nothing else to talk about this series. The next series against Seattle, that's not going to be fun at all because
I'm
the
excited
Mariners.
for Noah McLean.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. That's the only aspect of next series that I'm excited about is watching Nolan McLean make his debut at Citi Field. But other than that, they're playing the Seattle Mariners, one of the hottest teams after the trade deadline, and they made some of the best moves at the trade deadline. So I'm expecting nothing more than losses. Maybe the only game they win is that Nolan McLean game because maybe he just shows out in that first game and makes a hell of a debut first game in the major leagues. But other than that, no, I don't see them doing anything in the series.
Even then, I don't think it matters because I made a joke to my brother yesterday, or I was half kidding that one of their pitchers could throw a no hitter and they'll still lose.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of where we are at this point. Ben says I was at the game last night and there just seems like a massive disconnect with at least one thing every night. It's really hard to fathom, especially when everything went so right for them last year. That's what's insane, and it's just like I've repeated this point at nauseum, and I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing about it, but I'm gonna say it again. It's just hard for me to grasp how last year, when everything went right, and you add Juan Soto, just like how do you not build on what you did from last year? I can't fathom that this team is struggling that much to build on what went right for them last year.
Yeah, I don't know either.
My attitude is if the team is going to put in the effort, isn't going to put in the effort, I'm assuming you mean, then why should I? The players are being paid a lot to be there. The fans aren't. And that's the other unfortunate part is we are packing the building every single night. Like we said going into the series, we probably weren't going to go to games. And then, the idiot I am saw tickets for $20. I'm like, you know what? For $20, why not? Why the hell not? And it was, a rough night from things and then the rain delay on top of that. Um, but I was like, you know what? They're up 6-0. Great. David Peterson on the mound, they should at least win this game, even though there still needs to be more because you beat Carrasco. Like I was already thinking about when they were up 6-0 in the post game. I'm like, I'm gonna get shit for it, but I'm not impressed entirely because they scored 6 runs on Carlos Carrasco. That should be the bare minimum. But a win's a win, I guess, right? That was kind of gonna be my takeaway. And they lose that game anyway. It's like, oh, all right, well, I guess I don't have to sit here and try to explain to everyone why I'm not impressed with beating a 50,000-year-old Carlos Carrasco.
Yeah, I mean, I even we were even saying to each other when they went up 6-0, and they even started hitting a couple more. They got a couple more hits on Carlos Carrasco. It's like cool, I'll take it, but I'm not gonna like give him a standing ovation because again you're facing a guy in Carlos Carrasco who's basically on the verge of retirement. Like putting up 6 runs should be the bare minimum.
He got DFA'd.
Especially when you look at this offense and with how much they're paid for, and really they should have put up more. But even not that, I mean, like he put up 6 runs on Carrasco. You should expect to win, and then even then, when you go down 9-6, and like I said before, like there's so much more baseball left to be played, and then the offense just disappears. It's like, oh, shouldn't be shocked by this because again, they've shown us who they are this year.
Yeah, he got DFA'd after the game, and they lost the game still. Just, I can't. Just awesome. But I think we're gonna wrap things up here because honestly, again, there's really not a whole lot to unpack. They start their series against the Mariners tonight, which they face some of the Mariners' best pitchers, which is going to be fun. I believe it's Castillo, Wu, and then Gilbert or Kirby. Not Gilbert, it's Kirby. Kirby on that Saturday game. I expect them to get swept. I'm not even going to sit here and, do the whole. All I'll say is prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Like we say every episode, they've yet to do that. They're going to get swept, and poor Noah McLean, because I expect him to ball on Saturday. But whether it's the likes of Helsley, whether it's Ryan Stanek, who I'm sure they'll force into a game this series, I don't know who it's going to be, but I'm sure someone is going from that bullpen is going to fuck it up, and I'm sure the offense is going to no-show as well.
Yeah, same applies to me. I have no expectations, so if they win a game, cool, I guess, but I don't expect them to do anything in the series. But like what Evan said, like what we've been saying with the past couple of podcasts, prove us wrong, even though they haven't been doing that to us over these past couple of series, but prove us wrong.
Yep. Unfortunately, that's all we could say. So thank you everyone for tuning in and watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. Turn on your notifications so you know when we upload or go live. And we'll see you guys in the next one.